survive. I think that pretty much sums everything up.
Perhaps we survived because the marriage didn't.
Maybe. So
And
we have to start back at the beginning of where we started today.
The beginning is where we ran into each other. The reason why we started talking. We were teenagers, all right, 16, 15.
Mm-hmm.
It's a complicated backstory, but...
Youth group.
But then hanging out past that, hanging out, spending time outside of that group, we started talking.
Mm-hmm. I remember we used to race down alleys.
We used to race each other.
And then we would talk.
And
Go ahead.
the things we talked about would vary greatly, and they were very interesting. We were talking about things that I didn't think I could talk to anybody else about.
Like what?
I was starting to detach from what I thought religion was. That's one example.
Mm-hmm.
How about you?
Yeah. I think we had those real raw conversations about in the culture that we grew up in, the untouchables, the wrestling piece, the questioning piece, this stuff doesn't add up. Like 1 + 1 is not equaling 2. And why is no one calling this out? Why can't we ask these questions? And how come when we do ask these questions, we're given these pat answers and told to just fall in line?
That was one of the big reasons we started connecting.
Mm-hmm.
There were other conversations where perhaps we didn't agree so much, but at least we were dialoguing.
Right. And with each other, being able to like come from different places and land at different places and have peace in the process. Where both you and I grew up that if you disagreed and you ended up at different places, one was wrong and one was right. And we didn't experience that with each other. I don't think, well, at least on my side, those conversations did not start because of an attraction to each other or any romantic ideations.
I'm going to agree initially, however, that did change for me. There was the lifestyle differences. There were the lifestyle differences that we had that we talked about as well.
Yeah, I guess we're going to have to do an explanation of where we came from for people to understand that. Well, maybe we'll do that.
We will.
Next.
Yeah, or later.
But yes, there were lifestyle differences.
And those were big challenges. And those lifestyle differences had to be resolved.
Or just, I think we had to acknowledge them eventually. I remember meeting you after school because you went to school late and I worked till midnight most nights and you worked till, you worked and then you went to school in the evenings. And you get back at 11 and I think I got off early that night and I met you at your house after work. We went for a walk and I asked what you were going to do after college. And I had my long blonde hair at the time. I remember walking, I was kicking like a stone on the sidewalk. And I said, so what are you going to do after college? Completely as if it was one of our normal conversations.
Yes. And I looked at you and I was like, I was hoping I could spend it with you.
And that kind of shifted a ton of stuff. And I think our conversation that night, I remember we went to the playground, the wooden playground, and we sat up in the tower. And then we moved, I think, was there was there a tire somewhere up in there? I feel like we were sitting on a tire at some point too.
Yeah.
And just talked through what you were thinking and what the future could be. It just kind of blew my mind.
Especially because you were involved in, you were going out of state.
I was working towards going to college. in North Carolina to a Bible school that my parents told me I needed to go to. Oh, that's not bunny trail there. But yeah, I was working to be moving, not staying.
I took you by surprise because I was living in a state and in a place that felt unnatural, but it's all I knew. And I wanted something different. I was going to school, and that was one of the only things that was progressive about the lifestyle that I was living. And I wanted out. I wanted peace and connection, and I didn't exactly know how.
And you were different in the environment you were growing up in. You were doing continuing education. You were more settled than a lot of the people around you. Your standards and your goals were not like by the hour. You at least were looking forward.
I'll take that. I'm not going to totally agree just because of the grief I have at choices that I made and how they affected life, especially this relationship. But thank you.
Well, you all have family, so.
Yeah, I have no record. So I took you by surprise.
Yeah.
And we didn't date.
We didn't date. I remember though, you told me that, and then you asked me to think about it. And I liked you, but I knew based on the differences that we had that there was no ability to have a relationship. And I thought we wanted different things in life, and we had different perspectives and blah, blah. And we met, it was a weekend. I remember we were at a picnic table at the Catholic school in the dark. And
yes,
I told you, nope, thank you for liking me, wanting to spend your life with me and see where this goes, but no, this can't happen. And you looked at me and you said, okay, I understand. And at that point, you said that you loved me enough that you wanted me to be happy, even if it wasn't you who were making me happy. And I felt in my gut like, oh shit. And like I felt my whole being respond to that. And then I dropped a ring. I wore a ring. No, not on this finger. I dropped a ring of some sort in between the slats and it got caught. And you spent like 40 minutes. And this was before cell phones and before, having a pocket flashlight. Fishing my ring out and getting it for me as we continued talking. And that, looking back, that sealed the deal for me. I must have been wanting an excuse.
I did tell you that, and our relationship started somehow. We are going to have to go into how this relationship was affected by me and how I was not relationship material in any way.
You weren't.
We got to go there at some point soon.
I know, but I really want to be careful because we both came with backgrounds and we both came with trauma. But my background made me uber capable. Like forced me into uber capability. And like no failure. And your background put you into avoidance and
let's survive. Let's just survive. Let's do the minimum we can do to survive because nothing else can be expected.
Right. And so now we can put words to that, hindsight 2020, all that shit. But now we can put words to that. But at that time, I think we were both just trying to figure it out. I remember looking at each other in that process. And even I think we could acknowledge that what we were experiencing was unusual, and saying, I love you as much as I know how to love. Because both of us didn't really have a grasp on what actual love was, like the different levels of love, like the agape love, the phileo love, the eros love, all the different like family relationship loves. We didn't have a really good foundation, and so we were really finding our way in a lot of ways with each other. First boyfriend for me, and
first real relationship for me. A lot of firsts with each other.
I had decided I was not going to date when I was like 13 years old, and I stuck to that.
I had, when I was a teenager, thought about how I could adopt as a single person, you know, as an early adult.
Yeah, we had that in common.
Yeah.
We both wanted to have no children and adopt.
That's the framework of how this started.
It is. I was still planning on moving.
I was still going to school. I was driving an hour to school one way with no driver's license.
Still supporting your family with your jobs and your internships.
And you were a shining beacon to say that, hey, there can be a better way.
Can do this different. Man, we're gonna have to go into like the evangelical purity movement and how that affected us getting started as well another time. But how that really affected our relationship and how we progressed in relationship. I mean, the long story short is I ended up getting pregnant, and after really just hanging out and not actually dating, like we hung out, but there was no actual date. I think there was one date that I planned and I paid for, and I paid for a lot.
You did,
but I recognize that you're paying for your family and whatever. And then I got pregnant, and then all the craziness around that again, another story. The rejection and the everything, and having to uproot plans and move. And we moved in with each other, and the day before we eloped, you brought me a rose and asked me to marry you. I mean, we just kind of like went into survival mode and thought, okay, let's do this. We'll get married. We'll just figure it out.
A big part of this relationship now is accepting the grief and the disappointment, to say the least, of what I was in this relationship. I would tell my girls to run very far from someone like me, and I'm not even beating myself up right now. That's just it. And so honestly, moving forward, let's be really honest and clear. I have to accept what I was and what I did in my own words, and move on and be able to continue to do this, because the grief, I get angry at myself, and I should, but
you shouldn't. You were doing the best that you could. You were an asshole, but I was a bitch. I mean, I reacted instead of being proactive. I reacted. That song that I played at the beginning, I Will Survive. I remember one time I had just found out I was pregnant, and I was at work, and in the office at work, there was a couple of us shared, we had a couch, and one of my other coworkers was going through something with her boyfriend, her fiance actually, and no one knew I was pregnant at that point. She was bitching, and I'm like, and we put I Will Survive, Gloria Gaynor, I Will Survive on, and we jumped around, and we jumped on that couch and jumped and danced and screamed it at the top of our lungs. And it was so like freeing for me. And so there were many times during that period before we actually got married, where the thought of not being together caused me a sense of freedom. And I look back now and I'm sad to say that. But it was, I mean, we were victims of, not victims, I don't want to say the word victims, but we were products of where we came from.
While you were feeling those feelings, while you were going through that, I also was under my own script and saying, I don't know how this is going to work, but I have to let this bring me out of what I know.
So you
it was an autopilot of saying I must do certain things, despite being, naive and self-destructive, saying there's something that I got to hold on to and develop. And I was on autopilot, so it didn't quite develop, but
but you saw it like as an escape from your life.
Not escape from my life, but being able to enter into what real life could be.
I think that's a good place to end.
Yes. The conversation has been good.